Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel called Zuzanareacts, where I learn all things Bharat with your help, and I just share my Slovak Central European point of view. And today's video is going to be very interesting. It's about uh, what is behind British media being biased against Hindus. And I know we've discussed this a lot on the channel. You guys have been mentioning about the bias of the media, and as you're aware, I don't really watch news or read news, kind of haven't done for decades. So it's going to be very interesting what we're about to find out together. And let's deep dive into this together and analyze it together. But before we do,
please like this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
okay, so I'm very curious what I will learn, and I feel like this lady is a Palki number 2. But let's get into it.
Are the British biased against India and in particular against Indian Hindus? Why do the British dislike Indians so much? Is there hidden resentment against their success both in India and in Britain? Is it because Indians in Britain are at the top wherever you look in Britain? That they don't fit into stereotypes, you don't hear of them being involved in terrorism. So I ask, why the resentment? And why can't the British accept that independent India is now one of the world's rising powers economically, politically, intellectually, and culturally? Could it possibly be true that 1947 still rankles the memory of being thrown out of India? India was supposed to collapse into chaos after the British left. They left India brutally partitioned. Instead, India blossomed. But that surely can't be the reason. Then why? I want to point your attention to a survey, an opinion poll. Its results have just been released. It was carried out among British Indians and Hindus staying in the United Kingdom. Here's what it found. 91% of British Indians and Hindus said that British journalists reporting on India were biased. Their reports were unbalanced. They were slanting stories towards continuous negativity that had little positive to report. 89% said the British media was not impartial about India. The BBC was called out, with 91% saying the British Broadcasting Company is the most unreliable source of information on India. The Guardian, they said, is not far behind. Frankly, I'm not surprised. Let's do an experiment. Do one thing tonight. Go to the Guardian website and search for India. You'll be treated to a series of negative stories on India. That's it. Concerns raised over what a third term for Narendra Modi would mean for the country amid rising Hindu-Muslim tensions. That's one. The Pannun plot. US lawyer allegedly targeted in Indian murder plot. Let's talk about the reportage on Kashmir's special status. Negative, of course. They refuse to see the swelling crowds enjoying themselves in Srinagar on New Year's Eve, or the peace that has come to the valley finally. If the Guardian newspaper is to be believed, India is in a state of constant disharmony, religious persecution, oppression of minorities, basically all things negative. And that is exactly why this survey becomes prime time news tonight. And the results become problematic, to say the least. What the British public read is what they believe, and the British press is feeding its people dirt on India. In April 2023, an Indian student at the London School of Economics was stopped from contesting college elections. Why? The student said that some people in the campus could not bear to see an Indian Hindu leading the students' union, so they cancelled him. Earlier in 2021, another Indian student was cyber-bullied into quitting from her post as the president of the Oxford University Student Union. Imagine that. So has the British media fanned this bias? Is it guilty of whipping anti-India sentiments across the country? You see, mass media is a powerful tool. Like I was telling you, what you see is what you believe. The question is, what explains the British media's negative projection of India? What is it that the BBC has against India? Because the BBC's anti-India campaign goes way back. For British journalists, India is still mired in poverty and despair. Of course, no one ever mentions that India's poverty and despair in 1947 were a British legacy. The British came to an India that was rich, an India that had 23% of global GDP. 200 years of exploitation later, the British left India as one of the world's poorest countries with just 2% share in the global GDP. In the 1970s, India was moving on, but the BBC decided to strike with its one-sided narration of the India story. From politics to policies, the BBC has tried to misreport on everything India. In 2017, the BBC ran this headline: Kaziranga, the park that shoots people to protect rhinos. The piece read, and I quote, "The way the park protects the animals is controversial. Its rangers have been given the kind of powers to shoot and kill normally only conferred on armed forces policing civil unrest. At one stage, the park rangers were killing an average of 2 people every month, more than 20 people a year. Indeed, in 2015, more people were shot dead by park guards than rhinos were killed by poachers. Innocent villagers, mostly tribal people, have been caught up in the conflict." That's what the BBC reported. The BBC's then South Asia correspondent questioned, has India's war against poaching gone too far? The BBC also produced a documentary, Killing for Conservation. It questioned the ethical legitimacy of the shoot-at-sight order for poachers. Guess what happened? Kaziranga National Park called out the BBC's misleading reportage, following it up with a point-by-point rebuttal. The park said that the rangers don't just shoot at sight. A warning is given beforehand. Shots are fired only and only if the warning is ignored, or the rangers are shot at first, or if the rangers feel there is an immediate danger to the prized and endangered one-horned rhinoceros. The BBC was forced to apologize. And how can we possibly forget the distasteful series on India's Prime Minister? The hate piece was reeking of propaganda. Why did the British press have to stoop so low? Is it hard for the British media to digest that the country the Great Britain once ruled is now a bigger economy than their own? That India is now employing British citizens, becoming an investment hub for British money, while BBC and Guardian may have been named and shamed. The bias against India goes far beyond these media houses. I will give you an example. In 2023, when India became the first country to touch down on the moon's South Pole, one British anchor tried to explain to his viewers why it would be a great idea to ask India to return British aid. Listen in.
To congratulate India on landing on the dark side of the moon, I would also like to now invite India to return the £2.3 billion foreign aid money that we sent them between 2016 and 2021. We're also set to give them £57 million next year, but I think the British taxpayer should keep hold of that, don't you? We should not be giving money to countries with a space programme. As a rule, if you can afford to fire a rocket at the dark side of the moon, you shouldn't be coming to us with your hand out.
This British anchor is talking about aid that's non-existent. So I ask, is this a classic case of colonial ego being hurt? When was the last time the British landed on the moon? The answer is never. And this could also be the answer to why the British press is so desperate to write off India's growth story and the success of Indians in the United Kingdom. Data collected in 2021 found that the Hindus living in the UK are among the healthiest. 87.8% of Hindus reported very good or good health. This was far above the national average. The data also found that Hindus were more qualified in comparison to the overall population. In other words, the Indian origin people living in the United Kingdom are faring better than the natives. The British press, it seems, is feeling sick.
All right. Very interesting. I've been writing down the notes, just thinking about the thoughts. So obviously, let's frame this conversation. I'm Slovak. I'm not English. I did live in the UK for, I think, around 14 years, 15 years. I don't know. I'm not that never good with years, but definitely over a whole decade. And for most of the part, I actually lived in London. So I actually view London as like totally different kettle of fish than the rest of the country. Whenever I say I would either live in London or live in Slovakia, because if you live outside of London, to me, it's like you might as well be living in your own country. So I also was a part of English family. I lived all over the country, in fact. But again, most of my time I spent living in London. And I feel like people in London, the English people in London, are quite different to the rest of the country. Hence, when you think about Brexit, London wanted to stay in, the rest of the country wanted out. So there is a clear mentality division, and I think it's perhaps nothing surprising. Every country has the capital, which is like it's different Vatican City, and then it's the rest of the country that has a very different opinions about what's going on. So I also mentioned that I haven't been following the news. So for me, whatever I'm learning about India is actually really from you guys, not really from the medium. So for me, it's surprising things that I've learned today, but also not surprising at the same time, because that's also the reason why I don't watch news, because it's very biased. So if I would form opinions, it's more from my personal experience or personal experience of people around me. Okay, so and obviously I'm not English, so it's hard to comment. But they're talking about if like the perception that they're trying to put forward about India amongst English people. I wonder if English people are actually reading the news. Maybe they are. I've really did not inquire with my English friends. And obviously, I think she's very right that this impacts mass. Like, if you understand mass psychology, you're able to manipulate the masses. So this is why I think it's important that everyone does their own research. But is it really possible in your day-to-day when you're just like bogged down with your problems to do a research about everything else? I feel like ordinary people here just care about surviving. They don't, I don't know, I still feel, maybe I'm wrong, and for all of you that living in not in India but outside of the India, do you feel like you're so consumed by news? But I feel like obviously we all have different priorities. For someone, they really want to be aware about what's going on. To me, it's not as important, simply because I feel like it brings a huge amounts of negativity into my life, and it's just as simple. Your mind attracts what it focuses on. So if you focus on news, on negativity, you attract more negativity into your life. It's just not a rocket science. This is exactly how it works. So yeah, I do want to mention a few things. So India is being at the top. That's something that British cannot accept. So I really been only learning about colonialism properly, I think properly from you, because Slovakia was never colonized, although we were slaves to surrounding nations. So it's hard for me to relate. But British, from my experience, they do have that, and especially that's the core reason, I believe personally, for my conversation with people, but might be wrong, right? It's just my conversation with English people. It's because they do feel imperialistic. They love the empire. They love the queen that has already passed, and they're proud. They're very proud, and I think to them, colonialism, perhaps to this day, is a sense of pride. They thrive on the powerful British Empire. And I always ask, like, why would you be proud around going around the world and enslaving people? But you can't really say that out loud to them, can you? Like, it almost sounds offensive, but at the same time, it's true, right? Like, and the rational people will understand. Yet still, it's a statement that it's a strange one to make, right, from someone. It feels threatening. It feels attacking. And I almost feel English people are lost without the Queen, without their history, without their football. I feel like these are the building blocks of their society or culture. So perhaps she's right that on a journalistic level, and I think that we really need to differentiate like the journal level and then ordinary people. And like the journalist, like the guy that she has shown, perhaps really deluded, but that has been very recent, right? Like that particular intro and anchor, and obviously we know what's been happening over, especially since COVID, when it comes to media. We all know that it has been manipulated. People, I'm sure, like if these newspapers are still up and running, I'm sure people are still reading them, right? And maybe they share, I don't know. I feel like people these days, at least in here, are way more skeptical. Like they might read that and they just might laugh. So I would dispute her claim about people believe what they read. I think that just maybe certain population of people, and I don't know. I would like to know. I would like to hope that people have a bit more discerning qualities. But obviously, over the recent years and the spread of wokeism and especially like political correctness, people like to be pretty, what we call over here. Like you want to be taken as pretty, meaning that you don't want to say anything bad. So, like I see that you were criticized for some sort of a, natural kind of type of issues, etc. And in Slovakia, that's like also a lot of like, for example, nature is a bit of a topic here. And it's simply because we have so many NGOs that are protecting the nature, which are actually really destroying the biodiversity. And we apparently have now a report from OSN about like the state of our forests that are apparently really bad. And we've had like been over preserving everything here. From what I understand, people here are pissed off about all of that. But I think that reporting and like the leading publications or magazine, and I would love to run a theory by you. I wonder if you can relate or not, but I started to realize that people that are politically correct and leading to maybe towards the woke side, and I think that just, again, that's just a theory, that's not confirmed. I've realized that people, at least in my life, are people that are from a richer family, so the people of doctors or lawyers and stuff like that. I actually are from like a middle class background, so I wasn't rich when I was growing up or anything, just like as ordinary. And because you come from a rich family, you have a lot to uphold. You have to be able to articulate yourself properly. You can't, you have to be the pretty one. You have to be the nice one, right? This is not really authentic. I mean, I feel like if you work on it, like I've been, you can be honest, but you can be also truthful. It's a very, very tough gig. I like to say things as they are. But British, for example, is not. That's just their culture. They are like to sugarcoat and talk indirectly. That's actually the culture and it's the phenomena. But I've realized that I feel like people that are from a rich family, but they're busy, like they have families, they have that background. They actually don't really read the news, and they are the ones that love to moralize. And we are playing here the game of black and white. Like everything is either good, like a white was men, but we have to realize that the world is both black and white, and it doesn't work that way. But then their beliefs are translating into, let's say, how they write and how they talk. And I feel like, at least in here, I don't know, it's in other countries, but it feels very much so that politics is moralistic. And I'm like, well, there's nothing moral about politics. It's about, it should be about economy and what works or what doesn't. And it's just way more complex. But I feel like there is the rise of moralism amongst journalists. They feel like that they are better than. And sometimes I ask myself, like, how dare you, like to talk to one group of people like you're better than them because you're intellectual. In fact, intellectuals are even more susceptible to play the game of black and white. And there's nothing wrong with like making the world a better place, but you cannot have cold without a hot. You cannot have black without white. And I like to approach things a bit more pragmatically. I've been in the leading senior positions in like the biggest advertising agencies in the world, and I know how things are at the top. It's just what works and what doesn't, and sometimes it's very tough. So when you want to stay and when you see what's going on, you don't really want to be part of that game. For example, me, right? Like I reached a certain level of seniority and I was like, I don't really want to progress further because I don't think it's worth my mental health. And this is definitely the money they are paying is not worth it. So I feel like this is where it stems from. I would love to know what you guys think about that. That's just my theory. I feel like people from richer families, they want to be nice and polite. They're playing the game of black and white. White has to win. I'm the good one. I'm the moralist one. And I'm the richest one. Riches is a righteousness that I can now go around and tell other people what to do and look and fight for the rights of those that can't fight for it, which in reality it's not like it's a bad cause, but they themselves, even though they feel like they can do their own research and all that kind of stuff around that, I feel they're still very biased. That's just my take. I would love to know what your take on that is. So, then you have the Self-Richest Man reporting in BBC. And that's another part of like where I, don't like certain things because, for example, when I've just recently completed a course, it was like an actually English institution's equivalent of university education. But it's like a certificate. So it's like an equivalent, I think, of a second year at uni. I already done uni like centuries ago. And, they talk about evaluation of sources and like perhaps the BBC would be considered the one that is credible. But I'm like, we know there's so many considered credible media that are spitting nonsense. So how do you even verify information? Like, where do you even go from here? But people will take certain, places like gospel. I think this is why you have so much alternative reporting these days, because no one believes that anymore. Anything, I don't know what it's like in India, but in the West, it's certainly the big media like BBC's Guardians of this world, they're losing. They're really, really losing. So this is why when I said, like, don't pay attention to what people are saying on those media, because I feel like people are not watching them anymore. And there is, I feel like, no place for you to be angst or irritated by that. So it was interesting that that survey. I would love to know what kind of survey that was, like how many people they've asked, like what was their background, etc. But I love the fact that she says, like Hindus, they know troubles. Are the British threatened? I personally, for me living there and knowing English people, I don't think for a normal person this is a topic. Maybe this is a topic for politicians that are realizing the economical impact and they are proud. I think that their upper class is very stiff upper lip. and that perhaps drives the certain narrative, I would be weary of what actually normal people, like normal people meaning like people that have jobs and are successful. Maybe they are not like the leaders in their businesses, but they're just going about their business. I always say that too, like the lower class of English society and upper class of the English society, to me, are opinion-wise the same. So I don't know. Yeah. So the Guardian, I have the note about the oppression of minorities. Like, I think that the reason why people would be attacking stuff like that is simply because it's a thing in the West. They will not come and comment on current events in India, but they will comment on things. There are, I would say, for most of them, that are activistic, and they're trending in the West. And yeah, and that would be those moralists that I am saying they exist. I think another thing is, obviously I don't know BBC journalists, nor do I really care, but I feel like it's very hard. And this is why my videos are just an opinion piece, because I'm just learning. But I think regardless, it's very hard to write about a country where you, let's say, never been, never lived. And I feel like you really need to live somewhere for 10 years to start. And I put exclamation mark start understanding the culture. I've seen from personal experience, I've seen it with people that stay lesser time, like let's say 5 years. I don't think that they get it. I don't think that they get the English. I feel like you really require, and I think I've had a chat with someone in the comments, and I say hello to them, but I still don't. When I don't like when people arrogantly go around and they spend somewhere a month or a year or 2 or 3 or even 5, and they think that they understand. No, you don't understand. You have to be actually integrated in the society, and you have to actually be a part of let's say, if I was to go to India, be a part of a Hindu family and understand how that works. Just going there and living somewhere and observing it for a while, that doesn't, for me, cut it. So for that matter, it's hard for, let's say, a BBC person sitting here in London, like I was in London, to really comment on India. I would not dare. Like, what I'm sharing is just like my perception. I'm not saying I'm right, but just like how I see things. But it's not like I've gone and analyze everything, because you're just getting an opinion of an ordinary person and what they view, right? I think sometimes it's more important actually than super deep analysis, because with that you get an insight actually what's going on in a society, rather than what facts are telling you, which might be misleading. So yeah, I don't know if English people would care that India is a bigger economy. And again, I'm saying English people as in ordinary people. Maybe the politicians they're threatened, but it's clear, like, I feel like the English empire is on decline. And as she's mentioned, like apparently India was supposed to go into shambles after they left, and they realized it didn't happen. And for those that are responsible, and maybe they're still like the people that are I don't want to say the word ancestors, but like like the people that followed those, or there are still people that are alive that happen, and they feel like egoistically hurt. But I feel like what I really want you to take out of this video is I want you to differentiate between general public and the English media. And there is no point in giving it any energy. And I know it's hard, because it is hard. Like, you wouldn't want anyone to spread incorrect information about you personally and stuff. And I get that. But what I just want you to think about is that there is a media, and then there are general people. And the general people in the UK especially now that I've been to India and I actually flew through Heathrow and I saw the increase in prices. Like, prices have increased everywhere, but there, damn, like, damn. I was thinking, what has gone on over here in the last year that I haven't visited? It's crazy. So I think that people are more concerned with their economy and what their politicians are doing than anyone else in the world. That is my take on it. I'd love to know what you guys think. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video with me today. If you did enjoy, please give a thumbs up, share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Press on the bell icon to get the notifications because it looks like some of you are not getting them. And I will see you in the next video. Until then, please do take care. I'm sending peace and love. Bye-bye.